Chapter 16, wherein the prince neither bawls nor bellows. Jemmy felt a surge of the creeps. Run for it, he wondered. Instead, he began to burrow out of sight under the loose heap of potatoes. Remember, he whispered to the prince, it's me they're after, not you. Tell 'em we split up. Tell 'em I swam the river. Prince Brat merely looked at him. The voices outside boomed. Stand and deliver, I said. And I heard you, exclaimed Captain Nips. Deliver what? Potatoes? Scurvy rascals. Help yourselves. Hang your potatoes, roared Hold-Your-Nose Billy. Deliver us some information and you can be off. We're after 2 runaway apprentices. Apprentice highwaymen? Captain Nips scoffed. Our affair? Girl with a bear said she saw 'em streaking through the river. You carrying passengers? Jemmy pulled the iron kettle over his head. The coach door was yanked open, and Jemmy could hear Cutwater's muffled cackle. Got one? The whipping boy it is. Where's your master, eh? Jemmy held his breath. He had no reason to believe that the prince would betray him again. There came a stiff pause. And then Prince Brat said, Swam the river. By then, Hold-Your-Nose Billy had ripped open the opposite coach door. Even through the kettle, Jemmy imagined he could smell garlic. Swim the river, faugh! He'd need scales and fins. Hardly a moment later, the kettle was grabbed off, and Jemmy's head stood exposed. Here's the potato we're after, Hold-Your-Nose Billy roared gleefully. Jemmy and the prince were yanked out of the coach, and the big outlaw shouted to Captain Nips, Throw me down your horsewhip and drive on. Hanging on to each boy by the scruff of his neck, the highwayman scrambled out of sight below the embankment. Hold-Your-Nose Billy looked angry enough to throttle Jemmy on the spot. Tricked me, did you? He bellowed. Flummoxed me with your fancy quill scratching. This game's up, Jemmy thought. He's tumbled that the ransom note ain't worth scat. But trying to look as innocent as possible, he replied, Sir? A gold sack or 2 would have satisfied me and Cutwater, snarled the hairy outlaw. Greedy ain't our middle name. But you raised the ante to a great cartload. Reckoned to slow us down, didn't you? It would be easier to drag around a dead horse. If we ain't light-footed, we're caught. That was your scheme. What a pair of fools, Jemmy thought. That hadn't been his scheme at all. You've got it all wrong, he declared. I swear it. Aye, enough plunder to burden us directly to the gallows, eh? Hold-Your-Nose Billy continued. Well, here's a whipping you won't never forget. He snapped Captain Nips' whip in the air to get the feel of it. Here's the whipping boy, Cutwater put in. He said it'll go powerful worse for us if we thrash the prince himself. Hold-Your-Nose Billy nodded sharply. Cutwater upturned the prince, holding him by the ankles in the air. Go to it, Billy. Jemmy finally found his voice. Lay down the whip, he commanded with a princely air. Don't you have an ounce of sense between you? Hold your gab. Simpletons! You can just fill your pockets with plunder and be light-footed as ever, Jemmy declared. Nobody flummoxes Hold-Your-Nose Billy and gets away with it. The whip snapped across the prince's back. Jemmy held his breath. He knew what it felt like. He saw that Prince Brat had set his jaws, just as Jemmy had always done, and not a sound escaped his lips. Harder, Cutwater advised. You didn't raise a peep out of him. The big man let fly again. You must have a hide like an elephant, said Cutwater. You don't feel a thing. He'll feel this, Hold-Your-Nose Billy thundered, and the leather whistled through the air. The prince's jacket was being shredded. Bawl out, Jemmy shouted. He dreamed of seeing the prince whipped, but now that it was happening, he found no satisfaction in it. Holler and cry out. I won't tell anyone. But Prince Brat only girded himself for the next blow. From the top of the embankment came an outraged voice. Betsy and her dancing bear stood there. "Ruffian!" she cried out. "What are you doing to that poor boy?" "No business of yours," snarled Cutwater. "Stop it!" But Hold-your-nose Billy raised the whip again. The next thing Jimmy knew, the girl had slipped the rope from around the bear's neck. "Sick him, Petunia! Go get him!" Chapter 17. Petunia to the rescue. The bear came snarling down the embankment. Rising on its hind legs, it bared its teeth and bellowed out a thunderclap of a roar. Cutwater dropped the prince and was off like a greyhound. Hold-your-nose Billy, his eyes round as snowballs, went charging off into the river. He raised a great splash, and if he didn't know how to swim, he learned instantly. Jimmy had reared back, but now Betsy gave a whistle, and the bear stopped in its tracks. "Good boy, Petunia. That'll do, darlin'." She slipped the rope back around the bear's neck. Then she bent over the prince. "The low-down bullies! Laying stripes on a boy's back!" With the bear sniffing him, Prince Brat didn't move a muscle. "Rein in your beast," he whispered stiffly. "Oh, don't be afraid of Petunia. Gentle as a kitten he is. Here, let me tend to your poor hide." "No." "Give us a look." "No, thank you," the prince exclaimed. "Lemme. Ain't you the brave one? Must stink something dreadful." Jemmy watched the prince slowly raise himself off the mud flat. He felt a growing amazement. Prince Brat, a brave one? It didn't seem possible. Gaw! There was a cast-iron streak of pluck in him. The prince moved his arms and shoulders. He winced, then began to brush himself off. "Steady on your legs?" Jimmy asked. "Steady." "You should have yelled and bellowed. That's what they wanted to hear." "And humble myself?" muttered the prince. "You never did." Jimmy gazed at him for a thoughtful moment. Then he indicated the two highwaymen. Cutwater had vanished, and Hold-your-nose Billy was trying to keep him from drowning. "Let's be on our way. They're sure to be back after us." "Not if you travel with me," said Betsy. "Me and Petunia." Jemmy found the horsewhip where Hold-your-nose Billy had dropped it. Betsy and the bear had already started up the embankment, and the boys followed. "Lawks," whispered Jemmy. "Ain't we a puckered sight, the both of us? Torn up and scruffy? At least, no one'll take you for a prince." Not far off lay the coach on its side. "Hanged if I caught sight of that steep rise off the side of the road," exclaimed Captain Nips. "Tipped us over, as you see." "Either your horses need spectacles," said Betsy, "or you do." Together with Petunia they lifted and pushed and righted the coach. They piled in and were off. Betsy and her dancing bear rode inside with the prince. Jemmy decided to sit with Captain Nips to watch for road hazards. They reached the city without further incident, except for being stopped by soldiers. The king's men were clearly looking for the vanished prince, but when a bear poked its head out the door or window, the soldiers stepped back and quickly waved the coach on. Chapter 18. Of assorted events in which the plot thickens thicker. As soon as the wheels rattled on cobbled streets, Jemmy felt an immense sense of relief. This was his turf, the city, and he knew more places to hide than a rat. Approaching the waterside fairgrounds, he saw prisoners in chains being marched aboard a convict ship. It lay in sharp contrast to the festival stalls and banners of the fair. Captain Nips eased the coach between a cellar of live fowl and a juggler tossing colored balls into the bright noonday air. "Thanks for the jolly ride, hot potato man," said Betsy. "Come along, Petunia. Let's fetch us a crowd and earn a copper or two." Jemmy collected his battered birdcage. "Don't rush off, lad," said Captain Nips, hauling out a canvas load of firewood from under the seat. "Ain't I been listening to your stomach bumbling for the last hour? Do me the kindness of filling the kettle at the pump. Soon as the potatoes are boiled up, we'll feast, eh?" Anxious as he was to be on his way, Jemmy hesitated. He was powerful hungry. Then Captain Nips laid a coin in his hand. "And while you're at it, stop off at the Cow Lady. the both of you, and get yourselves a couple mugs of drink to drink." Jemmy picked up the handle of the kettle, but almost at once Prince Brat snatched it out of his hands. "I'll do that." "You?" Jemmy replied. "It's servant's work." Then who'd take me for a prince toting water?" He smiled. He laughed. "I've never been allowed to carry anything, not my entire life." Jemmy led the way. He'd never regarded fetching and carrying as a privilege. Princes and such like were hard to fathom, but the sound of merriment lingered in his head. He'd never before heard Prince Brat laugh. They dodged acrobats, and a stilt walker, and a harp player. Through the hubbub came a great squeaky voice. "Jemmy! Rat-catching Jemmy!" Turning, Jemmy spied a tall boy wearing a checked cap. It was Smudge, tending a sawdust pit squared off by a board fence, a dog and rat pit. Beside him stood a stack of rat-filled cages and a black terrier leashed to a post. "By gigs, it is you, Jemmy," said Smudge. "Reckon you call the king by his first name these days." "Hello, Smudge. You give up mudlarking?" "I've come up in the world, ain't I? Same as you, Jemmy. How do you like me dog? Best rat fighter you ever saw." With a practiced eye, Jemmy surveyed the cages. But those rats look tame enough to eat off your hand. Best I could afford. Catch me some castle rats, and I'll make a special feature. The king's own rats. Not my line of work in the castle, Smudge. It's not true you're whipping boy, is it? Jemmy felt a flush of embarrassment and dodged the question. "I've learned to read and write." "No!" "The bottom truth. I've read many a book from beginning to end." "What's in 'em?" "All nature of things. I can do sums, too." Smudge was impressed. "Ain't that a wonder? Never heard of a rat catcher could write and read and do sums. You don't fit. Don't forget your old friends when you grow up to be duke or something." "I aim to go back to the sewers," replied Jemmy stiffly. "I'll catch you some rats first chance." But even as he said it, Jemmy felt a bleak discomfort. He would miss the shelves of books he'd left behind in the castle. In the sewers he hadn't been aware of his own ignorance. He saw no choice now but to return, but he realized that he'd lost his taste for ignorance. Smudge was saying, "Who's the cove?" "What?" "Your pal." "This is—" Jemmy caught himself. He began to stammer. This is—" The prince answered for him. "Friend of Jemmy's the name." "Then friend of Jemmy'll do." Smudge put out his hand to shake. Jemmy caught Prince Brat's momentary confusion. "He never shakes hands." "Of course I do," said the prince with a quick grin. He took Smudge's hand. "Glad to shake your hand, Smudge." "Likewise." Jemmy dragged the prince away. Smudge had committed a terrible offense. No one was allowed to shake hands with a prince. "Why did you do that?" "Because I've never shaken hands before." "He could be hung for less." The prince was staring at his hand. He felt friendly, trusting. "I may introduce the practice at court when I become king." Jemmy's ears pricked up. "King, is it?" he thought. "So it was just bluster that you might never go back to the castle. Gah! I hope you don't want to learn to catch rats first." Moments later they came to a stout old woman with hands as gnarled as tree roots. Beside her, munching grass, stood a cow with a brass ring in its nose. "New milk," the cow lady called out. "New milk, fresh from the cow. Best in the land. New milk." Jemmy handed over the coin. The milk lady fished 2 mugs out of a hot tub of water, sat on a stool, and began to milk the cow directly into the mugs. Her aim was as skilled as an archer's. "Have you heard the earful?" she asked. "Our prince has been abducticated. Imagine!" "Imagine," the prince replied coolly. She was looking directly at him. "Our darling poor king," she went on, "weeping his royal eyes out, no doubt. Though why he'd spring a tear for that little toad, I don't know. Mighty tear, they say, is Prince Brat. Pity us the day he becomes king, eh?" She handed over the pair of mugs. Jemmy drank the warm milk down in unbroken gulps. But then he noticed the princess standing motionless, a vague, unseeing look in his eyes. For certain he knew everyone called him Prince Brat behind his back, didn't he? "Drink up, lad," said the cow lady. "My stars, never seen such rags on a boy. They look like cast-offs from the old clothes man." She gave out a joking laugh. "Drink up before you scare off business." The prince drained the mug and shuffled away. As they filled the potato kettle at the pump, she looked at Jemmy. "Treasonous old woman! I could have her tongue ripped off for lying." But there was no steam in his voice. Taking a whipping was bad enough, but to learn that his subjects dreaded the day he'd grow up and become king had deeply shaken him. "She meant no harm," Jemmy murmured, keeping his eyes alert for soldiers. "Is that what they call me? Prince Brat?" Jemmy nodded. "Does everyone hate me?" "More'n likely. What about you?" Jemmy hesitated for a moment. "I did. But maybe I don't." Jemmy couldn't sort out his feelings. "The pot's full. Let's go." It took the two of them to carry the iron kettle, now full of water. They passed a magician with a bald head, a street fiddler, and an umbrella seller. His wares opened around his feet like black silken mushrooms. Suddenly there loomed up a soldier on horseback, his eyes on the search. There was nothing to do but brazen it out. Jemmy took a tighter grip on the handle, but was ready to fly if he had to. The soldier passed by with only the merest glance. What was he looking for? A prince in fine velvets and a crown cocked on his head. Was it clothes that made a prince, Jemmy wondered, just as rags made a street boy? He had a notion that the prince felt secretly disappointed not to be recognized by any of his subjects. Wasn't he getting his head stuffed with surprises? Before long, potatoes were boiling in the pot. Not far off, Betsy had drawn a crowd with Petunia, now balancing a gentleman's hat on his nose. And then the bear began passing the hat for tips. Jemmy no longer felt the slightest concern about the soldiers. He had no doubt that Hold-your-Nose Billy would trace him and the prince to the fair. Had they fallen into the company of a girl with a trained bear? Where else would she be going? Finally, Captain Nips began spearing boiled potatoes, and Betsy returned with Petunia. "We could eat a bushel," she exclaimed, jingling a handful of coins. "Courtesy to fellow artists," said Captain Nips, refusing the money. He split open a pair of plump potatoes. "Salt and pepper?" "Pepper for me, salt for Petunia." Captain Nips reached into one coat pocket for a pinch of salt, and into the other for pepper. "Salt for me," said Jemmy. "And you?" Captain Nips asked the prince. The heir to the throne balked for a moment, and Jemmy knew why. He'd certainly never eaten a potato before. In the castle, roots were regarded as peasant food. I don't know," the prince stammered. "When in doubt, salt," chuckled Captain Nips. And then he began calling out to the passing crowd. "Hot, hot, hot potatoes! Captain Nips, hot, hot potatoes!" Jemmy gorged himself, anxious to be off and not certain when he would eat again. The prince nibbled at first with his fingers, and then threw his royal pride to the winds. He bit off whole mouthfuls. A ballad seller was working his way through the crowd, crying out his wares. He waved a bamboo pole with long paper streamers fluttering from the tip. 3 yards of songs a copper, old songs, new songs, sing 'em yourself. 10 verses of poor pitiful Polly will make you weep. 16 verses of that notable highwayman Hold-your-Nose Billy. Jemmy's ears pricked up as the ballad seller began singing a sample of his merchandise. Hold-your-Nose Billy, a wild man is he, hang him from a gallows tree. Here he comes, there he goes, don't forget to hold your nose. The street song had once amused Jemmy, but now he only sharpened his eyes. He wiped his hands on his sleeves and turned to Captain Nips. "Thanks for the grub, sir." "Where are you off to?" asked Betsy. "Here's the place to put a jingle in your pockets. Can you turn cartwheels or something?" "I catch rats," Jemmy said simply. "Rats?" Betsy made a face. What on earth for? There's good money in sewer rats. The meaner the better. My eyes, exclaimed Betsy. Don't you get bit? Many a time, said Jemmy. Captain Nips cocked an ear. What's that running patter yelling about? A crow-like voice pierced the air, and then the news seller appeared, his tongue wagging like a bell clapper, a bundle of broadsides under his arm. Prince sold to gypsies, the true and genuine facts. Ink still wet. Whipping boy charged with dastardly scheme. King offers reward for the unspeakable rascal. Dead or alive. Full description. Get your copy. Keep your eyes peeled and catch the reward. The running patterer was selling his broadsides almost as fast as he could yell. The facts were cock-eyed, but Jemmy grabbed his birdcage, backed off, and was gone.